let us begin. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Punaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So today for our contemplation we will take this object of space. Of the 5 elements that is discussed in many spiritual scriptures, all the philosophies of India, space is the most subtlest. Earth, air, water, fire, they're all much more grosser because they can be experienced much more easily. So space is this aspect where we are aware of space and we use it in our language. But yet it's not that tangible as earth or water or air. So we say the west, east, north, south as directions, and we point quite randomly in a direction, implying that that is that aspect of space, that division in space we are pointing to. So for this practice, for this contemplation exercise, we can, if you like, keep our eyes gently open and try to become aware of that space around us. Do not look at any specific object. Wherever you are seated, just try to become aware of this aspect of space. So this is a Vedantic kind of meditation where we are trying to become first aware of this aspect of space itself, because it is the pointer or it is a representative quality of consciousness. Just as how everything can come in and out of space. Birds are flying in the sky. Sounds percolate through the space. All the other elements move through the space. Similarly, that's the nature of consciousness. Chit. So first let us become aware of this aspect of space and how in this space everything is allowed to be. And yet it itself doesn't take up space, meaning it doesn't fight for space with other elements. It allows all the elements in it. But it itself is not destroyed, moved, or it itself is not diminished in any way. Now what we're going to do is we're going to try to separate this aspect of what we call as outer space and inner space. Bhutakasa and chidakasa. Bhutakasa is this outer space which we talk about with respect to the other elements. So if you kind of look around wherever you're seated, you become aware that this outer space is still something that I can become aware of. Now, if you like, you can close your eyes and try to become aware that this mind or this consciousness which makes me aware of all these outer elements and the space itself, isn't that also of the nature of space? So in this space of the mind or the space of consciousness, a thought arises which makes me aware of the elements or the space outside. All the outer things, whether they come through the sensations or the senses, sound, sight, smell, taste, touch, or if they're just a memory, a intention or plan for the future, all these are arising in the space of our consciousness, chidakasa. So in this space of consciousness, I may have some thought that I'm doing meditation, I'm practicing contemplation. And in this space of consciousness, I might have thoughts of future or memories of past or some specific mental state, feeling. But the space of consciousness is not affected by anything that comes and goes in it. These different thoughts, these different feelings do not destroy the consciousness, do not even physically move the consciousness out so that they can be paid attention to. Nor do they diminish the size of consciousness. So our consciousness is like this unlimited, infinite space. Anything can come and anything can go, but it itself remains pure and untainted, unaffected by anything. So when we compare this inner space with that outer space, we realize that this thought or this perception of space, outer space, is also a thing that comes in and out of this inner space. In that chidakasa, the bhutakasa comes and goes. So the space which is the subtle element of this world, the first kind of perception I have of this world, also arises and goes in this vast inner space of infinite consciousness. So when we try to separate this out, we become aware of this deeper inner reality, what we call as Sat or Chit. So that shloka in Panchadasi says that Satvastvadika vrittitvad dharmi vyomnastu dharmata diya sata pratakare bruhi vyoma kimatmakam. Dharmi vyomnastu dharmata. One of them is an attribute. Another is that entity of which it belongs to. So that outer space is an attribute of that deeper inner space. The all-pervading space is that one space of consciousness. Just like how in our dreams we can dream of aeroplanes, huge palaces, and yet physically we are sleeping in a small little space. So this is the power of the mind and consciousness. That consciousness expresses its power and it becomes a dharma, meaning an attribute. The dharma of that thing is this qualities of space, fire, water, air, earth. So when we do this kind of viveka, discrimination, discernment, we realize that even what we thought has the essential aspect of the world, has these 5 elements, they are also not ultimately real. They are also just an attribute. So this allows us to contemplate on this higher reality, the higher truth. So just take a minute or two to contemplate this inner space, or this one space. Really, this is the only one space, and in this, other space seems to arise as thoughts, perceptions. So all that we experience in our mind and our inner being as thought, perception, sensation, all this are arising in this one space of consciousness. And this one space is the only reality, the eternal reality. And that is our true being, our true nature. But the moment we interact with the world, the moment we interact with other people, we lose this sense of reality to this inner space, this consciousness. because that kind of outer activity has become our practice. So by contemplating, by daily thinking about it, by talking to wise, realized people, what happens is we again and again come back to this deeper reality, which is mentioned in the Vedantic scriptures as the ultimate reality of our being. So this practice of paying attention to this inner consciousness slowly overcomes or supersedes this instinctive practice we have developed of taking everything we see in the world of objects as the reality. In the Yoga Vasista, it says that tat chintanam tat kathanam anyonyam tat prabodhanam etadeka paratvam cha tadabhyasam vidhur buddhaha. The practice that the realized rishis told us to do is to consistently keep contemplating on this one inner reality, this one space of consciousness. And in understanding that, and in completely devoting one's mind and one's energies in awakening that knowledge of our own self, so in this way, that outer space of the world can help us to bring to that inner realization of this one space, which for the purpose of language we use as inner space. So when we perceive the outer space of the world, we can use that to become aware, to remind ourselves of this one space of inner space of consciousness. From that bhutakasa to chidakasa. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.